Hello there everybody, Roy here from Telechron Time. This is where we discuss just about everything about Telechron clocks, General Electric, Revere, and in this particular case, this is going to be Herschede. Take a look at this clock. This is one of those unknown models, again from 1935, so stick around for a few moments and let's take a closer look at this clock in depth. So I have a General Electric 372 Hanover on the test shelf right now. It's going through its 48-hour test phase before I complete the clock. So I thought while I had a little bit of time, I'd start on this one here, which was next in line. And this clock was sent to me by a gentleman by the name of Jeff B. And this comes out of Yeagertown, Pennsylvania. This is a 1935 Herschede model unknown. Now, for those of you who don't know, Walter Herschede owned both the Herschede Clock Company and he also owned the Revere Clock Company. At first, he didn't have little faith in the electric movements, but as time went on, he started using the Revere movements in his Herschede clocks also. Typically, Revere clocks would be identified by a 3-digit number stamped on the bottom of the case, like 921 or 422 or something like that. And Hershedes were always identified by a 4-digit number. However, I could tell you for a fact there have been some Reveres that have a 4-digit number stamped on the bottom, which kind of tells me that perhaps they were targeted to be a Herschede, but for some reason, maybe marketing reasons or inventory reasons, they were put into the Revere line. So there's absolutely no stamping or indication of a model number on the bottom of this case, and that makes this another one of those unknowns from the 1930s. That whole period between say 1932 and 1938 is just a mystery, because some clocks were cataloged and identified and others, such as this particular one, have absolutely no markings on them whatsoever. So I really don't know much about this particular clock. One thing I can tell you about this particular clock, I have a feeling it's going to be a real Pandora's box. This clock has definitely got some issues. Well, first of all, it's dead in the water. It's not running at all. Okay. Secondly, I take a look at this and take a look at the sides over here. This clock is just covered in small paint specks all through it. And down here, it definitely has some finish damage due to aging. It's got some cracking in the veneers. And as I spin the clock over to this side, it's going to be a lot of the same. Matter of fact, I could run my fingers across here and actually feel the ridges in here. So look at all the scratches here. Let's see what was on the front there. Really nothing much on the front to talk about, but you could see on the back, okay, a lot of scratches in here. So this clock has really seen its better day. Now there's a couple issues on this right away that really kind of had me stumped, and the first one I'm going to point out is this thing here. Okay, this bracket right here, I don't believe this is supposed to be here. This is off of a 1930s clock, because what it's supposed to have right here is a small, like a little electrical box where the wiring would be connected. This is what it would look like. I have one right here. So just to give you an idea. Okay, so they didn't use these on the 1935 clocks. I think what it's supposed to be is there's supposed to be a small piece of brass here that attaches to this screw here and then comes up to hold this. This is for the power eye. Really, that's the only thing that this thing does, is just hold the power eye knob there so you could go ahead and turn it. So the problem that I have here is that this clock case is so small. Take a look at how skinny this is. Look at the big scratch on there too. But this is so skinny. The wall of the clock is right here, and I mean, the movement itself is pretty much butted up against it, okay? And this is just wedged right against the wood here. Okay, I don't know if you'll be able to see that. It's kind of hard to see. Let me kind of just adjust this a little bit so I can see better. There we go. Okay, so this is wedged up against the wood there, and not only that, but it's wedged up against the wood here. So I have absolutely no idea how somebody put this movement in there or how I'm going to get it out. It's so packed tight in there. I did notice that most of the Revere clocks would have a chime shut off, which would be located right here. It would be a lever that you would lift up and it would raise the chime arm so the chimes wouldn't play. But this particular clock did not have one. And then there's this little thing right here. I have absolutely no idea what that is. Well, in order for me to get that part out, I had to take the dial off. And the first thing I noticed when I took the hands off, all 4 of the screws that hold the dial in place were missing. So I mean, right away that just tells me this clock has been boogered with at some point in time, and that accounts for the scratch right there, that between the 4 and the 7. What happened is that because of the fact this was not pressed against the case because of the missing screws, the hour hand would just scrape on that and just make that mark in there. But you could see the dial itself is pretty dirty. And I did get this piece out, and I searched my parts bins, and I don't have the correct part that goes in there. I have a good feeling I know what it is, and I don't have it. This is totally wrong, but it does work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this right here, okay, and just use this section here to hold that power eye in, because you don't need the rest of this at all. So when I talked about opening up a Pandora's box, I wasn't kidding. Right away I found a jerry-rig job here. This bearing right here is for the main hand shaft. It's completely worn out. It's actually oval in shape. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm going to take some pictures of this movement. I think I could show more detail than with the video. So what did the guy do? Well, instead of polishing this all out and putting a new bearing in there, he put this jerry-rig thing on there, okay, which actually closed up over the hole and made it round again. But did it work? Yeah, this is just an old-fashioned way of doing a quick jerry-rig job on here. It's not correct. Obviously, this needs to be polished out and have a new bearing put in. I finally figured out what this gizmo is. This actually is the chime shutoff. You slip the long piece of it under the chime arms and then go ahead and snap it back into place like that, and it keeps the chime arms from falling when it's time for the clock to chime. Makes me wonder how many of these have gotten lost over time. We've installed a rebuilt rotor, expertly rebuilt by Dave Friedland over at Telechron Clock. His rotors are built right back to factory spec and will come with a 5-year warranty. So check this out. I fabricated this piece out of a piece of brass, and I'm going to use that instead of that big honking piece of metal that was in there. And this actually, in my opinion, is pretty much what the original piece looked like to hold this power eye in. Not only does it work perfectly, but it looks a heck of a lot better than that big thing that was in there before. So we're going into the next step of testing here, and this is where I just have the movement jerry-rigged into the case. I have it running. I did some corrections on it before I put it back in the case. I had a heck of a time with both the chime and the strike trains on this, so the only way I could tell if it's working properly now is just to let it run like this for 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 days, you know, and I'll keep tweaking it out as time goes by before I finish it. But in the meantime, let me just go ahead and turn this around. I advanced the time on this clock to 15 minutes to 3, so hopefully it'll chime 3 times. Let me go ahead and give this a turn here. So far so good. Up on the test shelf it goes. Well, we're back with a completed clock. You know, the owner, Jeff, he told me he's a collector of Herschede clocks, but believe it or not, he collects grandfather clocks, and he said he has several of them. He picked this particular clock up at an auction up in York, Pennsylvania. Jeff gets the historical award for deciding to bring this clock back to life because there's not too many people that would have done what he just did. Between my work and the cost of the rotor, this restoration was not cheap. Jeff's dedication in saving this little guy is the difference between preserving a piece of American history or having it end up in some landfill. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you everybody for stopping in, and we'll see you the next time around. Bye-bye.